scream run? Never!
Howdy there, Murdoch here, and we're back in this toy review with a robot. And it's not a Transformer this time. We're going to be taking a look at the Toynami Robotech VF-1J Veritech Transformable 1/100th scale figure. But we're going to take a look. We're going to see the various modes. Of course, there are 3 when it comes to Robotech, when it comes to the Veritech Fighters. And yeah, we're going to see how it looks. We're going to do some size comparisons, give some initial thoughts and feelings, and just kind of give a light review and whether or not I would recommend picking up this figure. But that's pretty much going to be it. We're going to jump right into it now. And here we are taking a look at the box. And really, even though I don't normally dwell a whole lot on the box and the presentation, as you'd expect from a box, it's not that big of a deal for the adult collector ages 14 and up, because, you know, in this country, adults are 14. There you go from the side. There's some stuff on the back, and then you go to the other side, you get a nice picture of Rick Hunter himself there. Top of the box, there. Bottom of the box, there. There is the grandpa knife. Oh. So you get the stand, all the various other pieces, all the extra bits, like landing gear and hands and gun and flight stand and all that. Looks nice and clean in his tray. It's a very simple presentation. There's your Micronian pilots. One of the first things I was left with, one of my first impressions rather, was he's got a lot of little pieces. So we have the pilots here, and you know, this one just flopped out of the tray and fell on my carpet. You just want to be careful as not to lose anything. The other thing I'm left with, just very initial impression, is that, you know, it does feel like a relatively cheap figure, to be honest. If you're going to compare it immediately to things you'll find at mass market, I don't know how you're going to feel about this, because it does feel like a little bit of a cheap figure. It's fairly light, feels kind of floppy and flimsy. I do think it's a relatively nice looking figure for a simple figure. You know, approximately a 6-inch scale figure. The plastic, the PVC, feels very similar to what you get in a Gundam model kit. It doesn't quite feel like the same type of plastic you might expect on, you know, a different type of action figure or a Transformer or whatever. It does feel like a bit of a lighter, therefore kind of cheaper plastic, to be honest. I don't know if it is actually cheaper. So, not really meant as an insult, of course, but that's just my initial impression, is it does feel a little bit cheap. Here is the Veritech in Guardian mode, which, if you don't know Robotech, it's essentially kind of like the half robot, half jet mode, often used for kind of like hovering around in cities, being kind of fast and mobile, but not being a full-on fighter jet, and not being as slow and grounded as like the Battleoid or robot mode is. I will be honest, I'm quite surprised at how well things did end up pegging in after initially, you know, them feeling kind of fiddly. But anyhow, so this is sort of a basic look at Guardian mode. We're not going to dwell too much on this mode because, well, personally, I'm not going to leave it in this mode, but you know, I really do want to give you guys a look. And I will say, it actually ends up looking pretty slick. You know, this is not a mode visually I think I'm really into, but it's something that is very, it's a very important aspect of Robotech, is this mode. So it has to be shown off for sure. And of course, you know, this is a toy with 3 transformable modes. The triple changer, if you will, using Transformers vernacular. But yeah, ends up being more attractive than I expected, to be honest. Feels a little bit fiddly, but if you're patient with it, I think you will be rewarded. So here we go. We got him in fighter mode, and once again, I think with a little bit of patience, you can kind of get this guy to look right. Maybe I could have spent a little bit more time with it, because it looks slightly, he just looks a little off balance. Like they're slightly going to like the left. It's very, very minute, and a lot of that might just have to be with like the way I have him transformed. But this like tailpiece, you can kind of see there's a bias of this part kind of looking like it's going to the right. And I don't know if that's just part, like I slightly mistransformed it or something, or the fact that a lot of pieces don't perfectly like have places to peg in. I do think at a glance, it's actually a pretty sharp looking fighter mode once again. Better than I expected. You know, in fiddling with it, it's like, you know, you don't feel like it's going to be too convincing, but I think that the top view is pretty nice. The underside, I think, is nice. Actually, the way they managed to hide the robot in there. It looks a little bit janky when you start to look at it from the side. It's a little bit fiddly. I keep going back to that word. It just feels a little bit fiddly. It would be nice if more felt like it could peg in securely. Like this piece here, this tail piece, just kind of flops around. I mean, it sits firmly enough. Well,
and it's a pretty good little base. Once again, on the surface, it feels a little bit cheap, but it ends up being much more thoughtful than I expected, which obviously is nice. I really like the way it kind of cradles the gun underneath the jet mode, the fighter mode, whatever you want to call it, and the various joints are actually firmer and hold better than I would expect. As you can see, it's at a pretty drastic angle there, basically a 45-degree angle, I think you could say. Back in Battleoid or robot mode, whatever you prefer, and he's on the stand. The stand, once again, works a little bit better than I was expecting. However, because of the way it's designed, you almost have to just get him in a pose you like before you try to stick him on the stand itself. It just kind of like cradles underneath his little backpack there. Because of the way the figure is designed, things don't entirely peg or latch or lock or stay perfectly in place. You see there's a little bit of a latch looking thing there, and right below it there. It's really tough to make this movement. So it looks like that top piece should latch into the bottom or vice versa and hold into place, but it just doesn't quite happen. All right, that's a great example of user error, and I can admit fault on that. So that hook actually does have a slot to peg into. So that hook goes into that square there. It's hard to, okay, there we go, try to get there. So it does actually go into there, and it will hold into place decently, it looks like. Overall, I definitely like it in Battleoid mode. This is most likely how I'll have it just on my shelf back there. Pretty cool. Once again, you know, it's kind of tough in a lot of ways to justify the price point, I think. You know, $35 price point in some ways is a little bit steep, but they put a lot in the package. There's a lot of effort there, and even though it feels a little bit fiddly, you know, I like it. I'm pretty happy with the purchase overall. As far as like, you know, posability, I don't really go over a whole lot of that stuff. I will for the sake of this video, just to kind of show you, like, you get a fair amount of posability. You get, you know, a lot of single joints, a lot of swivels, you know, some ball pegs and stuff. You know, this is on a hinge joint with a single ball peg, so you get a lot of range there. I mean, you know, he can pretty much look in any direction you'd reasonably want him to. You know, the legs rotate, you know, basically what could be a full 360, but they are hindered, of course, by the top of the hip there and the backpack with the wings, and you would never want to do that anyway. You know, you have essentially effective, almost double jointed knees. Strictly speaking, not, but they're basically an effective double joint, and you get more than a 90 degree, which is more than you'd ever really need. Also swivels at the knee, which is nice. Obviously no waist joint. This is getting floppy on me again, but that will snug in decently enough. Playability wise, you know, these toys aren't made for play specifically, so playability, it would be annoying, but it's fine, I think, for a shelf and just posing and having, you know, fun that way. I think it represents the Veritech Fighter quite well. You know, it's a nice, relatively cheap price point for what a lot of collectors would expect from a Robotech figure. Not cheap compared to other toy lines necessarily, but, you know, really to upgrade from here, you'd have to spend probably twice as much or more. We're going to do some comparisons, though, and then pretty much call it. He stands at approximately, they say 6 inches. That's really only if you include the antenna. At the head, the top of the head, it's maybe just over 5.5 inches to my eye. And next to another iconic transforming jet, Starscream. Next to Marvel Legends, Daredevil. Next to my new Hey Arnold figure, it's a bobblehead of Arnold. that was a little too hard. Rob Van Dam. Next to Robotech Battle Cry for the original Xbox. A bottle of whiskey. And next to a Robotech DVD. And next to a whole season of Robotech on DVD. I hope those are okay. Well, that's pretty much going to do it for this one. I hope you enjoyed the video on any level, whether that be the information I gave you, the fun, the silliness we had, and if you didn't like it, well, I'm sorry. You stuck with this video this whole time to not enjoy it. That's too bad. But beyond that, hit the like button if you did enjoy it or find it helpful on any level. And if you'd like to see more toy reviews or silly stuff that I'm doing on this channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. As I always say, it makes me feel like I accomplished something. But otherwise, I guess I'll see you in the next one. Bye!